In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where 1,000 civilizations had risen and fallen, where wars were fought with words before weapons, and where diplomacy decided the fate of entire star systems, there existed one universal truth that every species understood: when threatened, you respond. You posture. You negotiate. You make demands. You show your strength. But humans? Humans did something that chilled the very core of every alien intelligence that witnessed it. When the Zephyrian Collective declared war on Earth, broadcasting their ultimatum across every frequency, demanding humanity's surrender within 72 standard hours, the galaxy watched and waited for the inevitable response. They expected defiance, perhaps desperate pleas for mercy, maybe threats of retaliation. Instead, Earth went completely silent. No transmissions. No diplomatic channels opened. No fleet movements detected. Nothing. For 48 hours, as the Zephyrian Armada approached Earth's solar system, humanity said absolutely nothing. The silence stretched across space like a void, and, in that void, something ancient and primal stirred in the minds of every species monitoring the situation. Because in a universe where everyone talks, the one who stays silent is either already dead, or planning something far worse than death. The galaxy was about to learn why apex predators don't roar before they strike. Ambassador Krelthax of the Galactic Mediation Council had seen many wars begin in his 200-year career. He had witnessed the formal declarations, the elaborate ceremonies, the exchange of diplomatic insults that preceded conflicts across the galaxy. Every species had their rituals, their ways of announcing their intentions to the universe. But this was different. Terrifyingly different. The massive viewscreen in the council chambers displayed the tactical overview of the Sol system. Earth sat there, a blue marble suspended in the void, apparently defenseless. No massive fleet formations. No defensive grid activations. No planetary shields charging to maximum power. Just silence. 47 hours, 32 minutes since the Zephyrian ultimatum, announced Controller Vexhai, her forearms dancing across holographic displays. Still no response from the human government. No transmissions detected on any frequency. Fleet Admiral Zargoth of the Zephyrian Collective leaned forward in his command chair, his reptilian features twisted in confusion. The Collective had spent months planning this operation. Humanity had been expanding too rapidly, claiming too many systems, disturbing the careful balance of power that had existed for millennia. They needed to be put in their place, and the Zephyrians had volunteered to do it. Perhaps they are preparing their surrender, suggested Commander Yithtar, though uncertainty colored her voice. Their military is primitive compared to ours. 300 ships against our 1,000. They must realize resistance is futile. Admiral Zargotha's tail lashed behind him. In all his campaigns across the galaxy, he had never encountered such behavior. Even the most outmatched civilizations would at least try to negotiate, offer tribute, or make desperate threats. This absolute silence was unnatural. Send another transmission, he ordered. Direct to their planetary government. Perhaps they did not receive the first message. The communications officer, a young Zephyrian named Kesslar, activated the transmission array. His voice, amplified by the ship's systems, broadcast across all frequencies toward Earth. Attention, primitive humans. This is Fleet Admiral Zargoth of the Zephyrian Collective. You have 24 hours and 28 minutes remaining to respond to our demands. Surrender unconditionally, or face complete annihilation. Your silence will not save you. The transmission ended. They waited. Silence. Back on the Mediation Council station, Ambassador Krelthax found himself deeply disturbed. He had dealt with humans before. They were known for their diplomatic skills, their ability to negotiate even from positions of weakness. They talked constantly, asked endless questions, demanded explanations for everything. They were perhaps the most communicative species in the known galaxy. So why weren't they talking now? Counselor called his aide, a nervous Thraxian whose tentacles writhed with anxiety. The betting pools across the galaxy are going insane. Most species are wagering on complete human capitulation within hours, but some are beginning to place bets on other outcomes. What other outcomes? Krelfax asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Well, sir, the Andromedans are betting that the humans are already evacuating their planet. The Centaurians think they're preparing some kind of trap. But the strangest bet is coming from the Void Watchers. Krelfax's blood chilled. The Void Watchers were an ancient species, among the first to achieve interstellar travel. They rarely involved themselves in galactic affairs anymore, spending most of their time in deep space, observing phenomena beyond the understanding of younger civilizations. What are the Void Watchers betting on? The aide's tentacles trembled. They're betting that the humans won't just win, sir. They're betting that after this, no one will ever threaten humanity again. Meanwhile, on Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the Swiss Alps, President Chen Wei sat in absolute silence with her cabinet. No panic. No frantic communications. No desperate planning sessions. They had known this day would come eventually. Humanity's rapid expansion had made enemies, and those enemies would eventually decide to act. But humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day they first looked up at the stars. General Morrison, the head of Earth Defense Command, broke the silence with a calm voice. All stations report ready, Madam President. Project Nightfall is armed and operational. Stellar cartography confirms all targets acquired, added Dr. Sarah Kim, her voice equally steady. The Zephyrian fleet will enter optimal range in 18 hours, 43 minutes. President Chen nodded slowly. And the colonies? New Geneva, Mars Central, and Europa Station have all confirmed blackout protocols are in effect, reported Communications Director Hayes. No transmissions in or out. As far as the galaxy knows, we have 12 billion people on Earth and nowhere to run. The president stood and walked to the large display showing Earth from orbit. It looked peaceful, defenseless. Exactly as they wanted it to appear. Madam President, asked Dr. Kim quietly, shouldn't we at least try diplomacy? The Mediation Council is still offering to negotiate. Chen's reflection smiled in the dark screen. Doctor, what do you do when you encounter a pack of wolves in the forest? Run, if possible. Fight if necessary. Wrong, Chen replied. You do what our ancestors did. You become something more dangerous than the wolves ever imagined possible. Across the galaxy, species were beginning to grow genuinely concerned. The Altarians, masters of psychological warfare, sent encrypted messages to their allies expressing confusion at human behavior. The Betelgeusians, known for their strategic brilliance, found themselves unable to model human responses because there were no responses to model. Even more disturbing reports began filtering in from intelligence networks. Human ships throughout the galaxy had simply vanished. Not destroyed, not captured, just gone. Trading posts went dark. Diplomatic stations emptied overnight. It was as if every human in the galaxy had simply disappeared, leaving behind only that blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. On the flagship of the Zephyrian fleet, Admiral Zargoth paced his bridge. His tactical officers had run every simulation they could imagine, but each one required human behavior to analyze. Without any response from Earth, they were flying blind into battle. Admiral, called his intelligence officer, we're receiving reports from our deep space reconnaissance. The humans appear to have abandoned all their outer colonies. No life signs detected on any human world except Earth. Evacuating their people to their home world, Zargoth mused. A defensive consolidation. It shows they know they cannot win a prolonged campaign. But Commander Yithtar was studying the tactical displays with growing unease. Sir, if they were consolidating for defense, why haven't they activated any of their orbital platforms? Our intelligence showed they had defensive satellites around Earth. Now they're not even showing up on sensors. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting, Commander? I'm suggesting, sir, that either the humans have completely abandoned any pretense of defending themselves, or... She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. Or we're missing something crucial about human military doctrine. As the fleet continued its approach to Earth, the silence from humanity became more than just unusual, it became oppressive. Communication officers across the Zephyrian fleet began reporting strange symptoms: difficulty concentrating, disturbed sleep cycles, increased anxiety. The ship's medical officers attributed it to pre-battle stress, but privately wondered if there was something more. On the Mediation Council station, Ambassador Krelfax had called an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, all trying to understand what humanity was planning. "This behavior is unprecedented in galactic history," announced Councillor Mertai of the Regellian Federation. "Every species, when faced with extinction, fights back in some way. Even bacteria struggle against antibiotics." "Perhaps they have already surrendered," suggested the Draconian representative, "and are too ashamed to announce it publicly." "No," interrupted the ambassador from Vega Prime. "I've studied human psychology extensively. They don't surrender easily. If anything, they become more dangerous when cornered." This silence suggests something else entirely. The Void Watcher representative, an ancient being whose species had observed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations, spoke for the first time in decades. "Young species," the entity's voice echoed strangely in the chamber, "you assume that silence means inaction. But, in the deep places between stars, we have learned that the most dangerous predators are those that make no sound before they strike. You fear human words because they are clever negotiators. You should be terrified of their silence." The chamber fell quiet at those words. The Void Watchers did not speak lightly, and their warnings carried the weight of eons of experience. As the final hours ticked away toward the Zephyrian ultimatum, something began to change in the galaxy's perception of the crisis. The initial amusement at human silence had transformed into unease, then into genuine concern, and now into something approaching dread. Because in a universe where everyone talked, negotiated, and postured before fighting, the species that said nothing at all was revealing something far more frightening than any threat they could have made. They were revealing that they didn't need to make threats. And, as Admiral Zargotha's fleet approached Earth's solar system, entering the final phase of their attack run, the silence from humanity became so complete, so absolute, that it seemed to echo across the void like the quiet before a storm that would reshape the galaxy forever. The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system with the precision of a military force that had conquered 17 worlds in the past decade. 1,000 ships arranged in perfect battle formation, their weapons charged and ready to deliver humanity's final lesson in galactic hierarchy. Admiral Zargoth stood on his flightship's bridge, surveying the tactical displays with satisfaction. The inner system lay before them, and still no response from Earth. No desperate last-minute negotiations. No futile military deployments. Nothing but that same, unnerving silence that had haunted them for the past 3 days. Long-range sensors confirm no significant military presence in the outer system, reported Commander Yithtar. A few mining stations on the asteroid belt, all appearing abandoned. Jupiter's moons show no active installations. It's as if they've simply given up. The Admiral nodded, though something still bothered him. In his experience, even the most cowardly species would at least try some form of resistance. The complete absence of any human response was unprecedented. "Begin the advance to Earth," he ordered. "Maintain formation. Full sensor sweeps. I want to know if a single human ship so much as twitches." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, every major civilization was monitoring the situation with growing fascination. The Galactic News Network had suspended regular programming to provide continuous coverage of what they were calling the Silent War. Betting pools had reached astronomical levels, with odds shifting by the minute as various species tried to predict humanity's next move. On the Mediation Council station, Ambassador Krelfax had not left his observation deck in 18 hours. The tactical feed from the Sol system showed the Zephyrian advance proceeding without any human interference. Every few minutes, he found himself checking the communication arrays, certain that humanity's response had simply been missed somehow. "Still nothing, Ambassador," his aide reported for the 100th time. "Earth remains completely silent. Even their commercial broadcasts have ceased." Krelfax's 4 eyes narrowed. Commercial broadcasts were the lifeblood of human civilization. They advertised everything, constantly, on every available frequency. For those to stop meant something had changed at the most fundamental level of human society. "Get me a direct line to the Void Watcher delegation," he ordered. When the connection established, the ancient being's presence seemed to fill the communication chamber with an otherworldly calm. "You have questions about the human silence," the Void Watcher stated before Krelthax could speak. "Yes. Your species has observed longer than any other. Have you ever seen behavior like this?" The response came slowly, as if the ancient being was considering not just the question, but the wisdom of answering it. "Once. Long ago, when we were young and foolish, we encountered a species on the rim of what you now call the Andromeda sector. They were small, seemingly insignificant. When we demanded their submission to our expanding empire, they said nothing. We interpreted their silence as acceptance. The ambassador waited, sensing there was more. We were wrong. By the time we realized our mistake, our empire was ash, and we were the only survivors of our species. We learned that day that silence is not empty, it is full of possibility. And some possibilities are too terrible to contemplate." The connection ended, leaving Krelthax staring at the tactical display with a growing sense of dread. On Earth, deep in the Swiss bunker, President Chenwei watched the Zephyrian fleets approach with the calm of someone who had long ago made peace with necessary choices. Around her, the command staff monitored systems that didn't officially exist, tracking movements through space that would soon reshape the galaxy's understanding of human capability. "Enemy fleet has passed Jupiter," reported General Morrison. "Still no deviation from projected course. They're heading straight for Earth, just as the simulations predicted." "Excellent," Chen replied quietly. "How long until they reach optimal range for Phase 1? Dr. Sarah Kim consulted her displays. 4 hours, 17 minutes, Madam President. All Nightfall platforms report ready status. The enemy has no idea they're already surrounded." The President nodded. Humanity had spent 50 years perfecting the art of appearing weaker than they actually were. Every ship the galaxy had seen, every defensive installation they'd observed, every military capability they'd demonstrated had been carefully calculated to present exactly the right level of threat, dangerous enough to be respected, weak enough to be challenged. Now it was time to reveal what humanity had actually been building in the dark. "Begin Phase 1 deployment," Chun ordered. Across the solar system, in the cold void between planets, things that had been sleeping began to wake up. Objects that had masqueraded as asteroids for decades suddenly came online. Space itself seemed to shimmer as cloaking fields that had hidden humanity's true defensive network finally powered down. On the Zephyrian flagship, alarms began screaming. "Contact!" "Multiple contacts," shouted the sensor operator, his voice cracking with panic. Massive energy signatures appearing throughout the system. "They're everywhere." Admiral Zargoth spun toward the tactical display and felt his blood freeze. Where moments before had been empty space, now showed thousands of human installations. Not ships, installations. Massive orbital platforms that dwarfed anything the Zephyrian fleet carried. Weapon systems that registered power levels beyond anything in their databases. "How did we miss them?" Commander Yithtar whispered. "Our sensors should have detected installations this large from light years away." "They've been here all along," Zargoth realized with growing horror. "Hidden. Waiting. This entire system is a trap, and we just flew into the center of it." The tactical officer's voice shook as he made his report. "Admiral, I'm reading weapon signatures we've never encountered before. Energy outputs that shouldn't be possible with known technology. They have us completely surrounded, and we never saw it coming." For the first time in 3 days, humanity broke its silence. The voice that came across all frequencies was calm, measured, and spoke with the absolute authority of someone who held all the advantages. It was President Chenwei, speaking not just to the Zephyrian fleet, but to every civilization monitoring the situation across the galaxy. "Admiral Zargoth of the Zephyrian Collective. My name is President Chenwei of the United Earth Government. You demanded our surrender. You gave us 72 hours to respond. We chose to remain silent not because we were afraid, but because we were being polite. The Admiral found his voice. What do you mean, polite? We were giving you time to reconsider. Time to realize that perhaps attacking a species you knew nothing about was not the wisest course of action. We hoped you would use those 72 hours to research human history, to understand what happens to those who threaten our home. Across the galaxy, diplomatic channels erupted into activity as species frantically searched their databases for information about human military history. What they found sent chills through every command center from the galactic core to the outer rim. Humans didn't just fight wars. They perfected them. Every conflict in their history had driven innovations that surpassed anything their enemies thought possible. They had turned warfare into an art form, and they had been practicing that art for thousands of years before they ever left their home planet. Admiral, President Chen continued, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, you brought 1,000 ships to attack our world. Allow me to show you what we brought to defend it. The display in the Zephyrian Command Center updated with IFF signatures from the Human Defensive Network. Numbers began scrolling past faster than the Zephyrian computers could process. 1,000. 5,000. 10,000. The count continued climbing. 50,000 orbital defense platforms, Chen announced. Each one equipped with weapons systems your species cannot comprehend, powered by technology you have never imagined. They have been here, waiting patiently, for 30 years. We built them in secret, tested them in isolation, and positioned them with the full knowledge that someday, someone would be foolish enough to threaten Earth directly. Commander Yithtar's voice was barely a whisper. Admiral, we should withdraw. Immediately. This is not a battle we can win. But Admiral Zargotha's pride would not allow retreat. You're bluffing, he transmitted back to Earth. No species could build such a network without others knowing about it. Our intelligence networks would have detected construction on this scale. President Chen's laugh was soft, almost sympathetic. Admiral, your intelligence networks detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. Did you never wonder why humanity appeared to expand so rapidly into space, claiming so many systems so quickly? It wasn't because we were reckless or desperate for territory. The implications hit the Zephyrian command staff like a physical blow. We were building, Chen continued. Every system we claimed, every world we colonized, every space station we constructed was part of a defensive network spanning dozens of light years. What you see around Earth is just the final layer. The outer layers have been watching your approach since you left Zephyrian space. Across the galaxy, species were beginning to understand the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. They hadn't just colonized space, they had militarized it. Every human presence in the galaxy was part of a vast defensive network designed to protect their homeworld from exactly this type of threat. On the Mediation Council station, Ambassador Krelthax was staring at intelligence reports that painted a picture of unprecedented strategic deception. Human merchant vessels that were actually mobile weapon platforms. Research stations that were forward sensor arrays. Colony ships that had been deploying military infrastructure across the galaxy for decades. They'd been preparing for this war since the day they joined the galactic community, he realized aloud. Every interaction, every negotiation, every diplomatic contact was designed to gather information while hiding their true capabilities. The Void Watcher's voice echoed in the chamber through the communication system. Now you begin to understand why we warned you. Humans are apex predators, Ambassador. Not because they are physically superior, but because they think like predators. They plan like predators. And they hunt like predators. Back in the Sol system, the tactical situation had become impossible for the Zephyrian fleet. They were surrounded by weapons they couldn't understand, outnumbered 50 to 1, and facing a species that had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. Admiral, came a terrified voice from the communication station, we're receiving surrender demands from 17 different civilizations across the galaxy. They're ordering us to stand down immediately. What? Zargoth snarled. Why would our allies abandon us now? The answer came from President Chen, her voice now carrying a note of dark amusement. Because, Admiral, they've just realized that every human ship, every human station, every human presence in their space is part of our defensive network. Right now, there are human weapons aimed at every major world, every fleet concentration, every strategic asset of every species that has ever threatened us. The scope of humanity's deception was finally becoming clear. They hadn't just built a defense for Earth, they had built a sword hanging over the entire galaxy. We told you we remained silent to be polite, Chen continued. We gave you 72 hours to leave our space peacefully. You chose to interpret our courtesy as weakness. That was your first mistake. Admiral Zargotha's hands trembled as he gripped his command chair. What was our second mistake? President Chen's voice carried the weight of absolute finality. Admiral, your second mistake was believing that humanity had shown you everything we're capable of. What you see around you, this defensive network, these weapons, this technology, this is what we built with one hand while shaking hands and smiling at diplomatic receptions. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any threat could have been. Because it was in that silence that the galaxy began to understand what humanity had built with their other hand. The hand they had kept hidden behind their back for 50 years. The hand that was about to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Admiral Zargoth stared at the tactical display in growing horror as more human installations continued to appear throughout the Sol system. His fleet of 1,000 ships, which had seemed so mighty when they departed Zephyrian space, now appeared pathetically small against the vast network of orbital defense platforms that surrounded them. Admiral, whispered Commander Yithtar, what are your orders? Before Zargoth could respond, President Chen's voice filled the command bridge once again, calm and measured as if she were discussing the weather rather than holding the most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy at her mercy. Admiral, I'm going to give you a choice. The same choice we would have preferred to give you 72 hours ago, had you been interested in listening rather than demanding? You can withdraw your fleet from our solar system immediately, return to Zephyrian space, and we will consider this an unfortunate misunderstanding. The Admiral's reptilian features contorted with rage and humiliation. And, if we refuse? Then, you will discover why, in 50 years of human expansion across the galaxy, no species has ever successfully attacked a human world twice. That statement sent chills through every member of the Zephyrian command staff. They had assumed it was because humans were skilled diplomats, always managing to negotiate their way out of conflicts. Now they were beginning to understand that there might be a far darker reason for humanity's peaceful reputation. On the Mediation Council station, emergency sessions were being called as species across the galaxy began to grasp the true implications of what they were witnessing. The Altarians, masters of psychological warfare, were the first to voice what everyone was thinking. If humans have been building military assets across the galaxy for decades without detection, their representative announced, then, we must assume they have capabilities we cannot even imagine. Our entire understanding of human military potential has been based on deliberate deception. Ambassador Krelthax was reviewing reports from intelligence services across dozens of worlds, each painting the same terrifying picture. Human research facilities that were actually weapons development centers. Human cultural exchanges that were reconnaissance missions. Human trade agreements that had positioned their assets in every major system in the galaxy. They've been playing a game we didn't even know existed, he realized. For 50 years, we've been dealing with humanity as if they were just another expanding civilization. In reality, they've been conducting the largest intelligence and military operation in galactic history. The Void Watcher's presence filled the communication chamber once again. Young Ambassador, you still do not understand the full scope of what you are witnessing. Humans are not revealing their capabilities to save Earth. Earth was never in danger. They are revealing their capabilities to send a message to the entire galaxy. What message? That the age of threatening humanity is over. Permanently. In the Swiss bunker, President Chen monitored the tactical situation with the calm of someone executing a plan decades in the making. Around her, displays showed not just the Sol system, but strategic positions throughout human space and beyond. Madam President, reported General Morrison, all outer system assets are in position. Phase 2 can commence on your order. Dr. Kim, What's the status of our friends in the Zephyrian home system? Dr. Kim consulted her displays, showing readings from sensors positioned throughout Zephyrian space. Shadow Fleet reports ready status. They've been in position for 6 hours, completely undetected. The entire Zephyrian government and military command is currently under our guns, and they have no idea. President Chen nodded. This had always been the plan. The defense of Earth was secondary to the larger strategic goal, demonstrating to the galaxy that humanity was no longer prey. Open a channel to Admiral Zargoth. It's time to show him what we built with our other hand. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, the communication system crackled to life with a new voice. Not President Chen this time, but a man with a distinctly military bearing. Admiral Zargoth, this is Admiral Marcus Reeves of the Human Shadow Fleet. I'm speaking to you from orbit around your home world of Zephyria Prime. The blood drained from Admiral Zargoth's face. Impossible. Our defense networks would have detected any approaching fleet days ago. Admiral, your defense networks detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. Nothing. We've been in your home system for 3 days, watching your government's response to this crisis with great interest. Commander Yithtar's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, if humans have ships at our home world, they have our entire government at their mercy, Zargoth finished, the implications crashing over him like a tidal wave. This was never about defending Earth. This was about demonstrating that they can strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. Admiral Reeves continued, his voice carrying the authority of someone who held absolute power over life and death. Admiral, I have 47 human ships in orbit around Zephyria Prime. Your military command, your government buildings, your orbital defense stations, all of them are currently targeted by weapons systems that could reduce your entire world to radioactive ash in under 10 minutes. The tactical display on the Zephyrian flagship updated to show new contacts appearing throughout their home system. Human ships, completely invisible until this moment, now revealing themselves around every strategic target Zephyria possessed. But, here's what's truly impressive, Admiral Reeves continued. We've had the capability to eliminate your entire civilization for the past 18 months. We knew you were planning this attack before you finished writing the orders. We've been tracking your fleet movements, monitoring your communications, and positioning our assets accordingly. Across the galaxy, similar revelations were occurring as human shadow fleets revealed themselves in orbit around the home worlds of every major civilization. The Galactic News Network was in complete chaos as reports flooded in from dozens of systems, human military assets appearing without warning around worlds that had thought themselves completely secure. On the Mediation Council station, representatives from across the galaxy were receiving emergency communications from their home governments. The message was always the same: human ships had appeared in their space, had been there for months or even years undetected, and were currently in position to destroy any target they chose. It's not possible, declared the draconian representative, though his voice shook with uncertainty. No species has ever achieved this level of strategic deception. The logistics alone would require resources beyond anything we've ever seen. The Void Watcher's ancient voice filled the chamber. Young species, you continue to underestimate what you are dealing with. Humans are not just another civilization that learned to travel between stars. They are a species that turned warfare into a science, deception into an art form, and strategic thinking into a way of life. What you are witnessing is not the work of decades, it is the culmination of millennia of evolutionary pressure that shaped them into perfect predators. Meanwhile, President Chen had stepped onto a platform in the command center, preparing to address not just the Zephyrian fleet, but every civilization in the galaxy that was monitoring the situation. Leaders of the galactic community, she began, her voice carrying across every diplomatic channel simultaneously. For 50 years, humanity has participated in galactic affairs as a junior member of the community. We have followed your rules, respected your boundaries, and sought peaceful solutions to every conflict. She paused, letting that sink in across the galaxy. During those 50 years, some of you have threatened us. Some have demanded tribute. Some have claimed our territory. Some have attacked our ships and killed our people. We have responded to each of these provocations with restraint, with diplomacy, with patience. The silence that followed was absolute. Every civilization in the galaxy was listening, knowing that whatever came next would reshape the balance of power for generations to come. That age of patience is now over. What you are witnessing in the Sol system and around your own worlds is not an act of aggression. It is a revelation. For 50 years, while we smiled and negotiated and appeared weak, we have been building the most advanced military force in galactic history. We have been positioning assets throughout known space. We have been preparing for the day when someone would force us to reveal our true capabilities. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Zargoth found his voice. "What do you want from us?" President Chen's response was simple and absolute. "We want you to leave our space and never return. We want every species in the galaxy to understand that the age of threatening humanity is over. We want to be left alone to pursue our destiny among the stars without interference from those who mistake patience for weakness." "And if we refuse?" Zargoth asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then, you will join the ranks of those civilizations that learn too late that humanity is not prey. Your fleet will be destroyed, your homeworld will be occupied, and your government will surrender unconditionally. Not because we are cruel, but because we are thorough." The tactical displays throughout the Zephyrian fleet showed the hopelessness of their situation. Surrounded by weapons they couldn't match, facing technology they didn't understand, with their homeworld held hostage by enemies they had never seen coming. "Admiral," came a transmission from the Zephyrian homeworld, "this is Grand Commander Thelmax. We are ordering immediate withdrawal of all collective forces from human space. Surrender is not acceptable, retreat is mandatory." Admiral Zargoth closed his eyes, the weight of complete strategic defeat settling on his shoulders. "All ships," he transmitted to his fleet, "begin immediate withdrawal from the Sol system. Maximum velocity. No hostile actions against human installations." As the Zephyrian fleet began its retreat, President Chen's voice followed them into the void. "Admiral Zargoth, before you leave our space, I want you to understand something important. What happened here today was not a victory for humanity. It was a demonstration. Every species in the galaxy now knows that we have been watching them, preparing for them, and positioning ourselves to defend against them for decades." The Admiral's flagship cleared Earth's orbital space, but Chen wasn't finished. "From this day forward, humanity will no longer hide our capabilities. Our fleets will patrol openly. Our weapons will be displayed prominently. Our defensive networks will be visible to all. We have learned that attempting to appear non-threatening only invites aggression from those who mistake kindness for weakness." As the Zephyrian fleet retreated beyond the edge of the solar system, the human defensive network remained active, its massive platforms tracking their departure with weapons that could have destroyed them all in minutes. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human shadow fleets maintained their positions around alien homeworlds, not as occupying forces, but as permanent reminders of humanity's reach and capabilities. The age of humanity as a minor player in galactic politics had ended. The age of humanity as the dominant military power in known space had begun. And it had all started with 72 hours of silence that had terrified the galaxy more than any threat ever could. Because in those 72 hours, every civilization in the galaxy had learned a fundamental truth about apex predators: they don't need to roar to prove they're dangerous. They simply reveal their teeth when someone forces them to. The galaxy would never again mistake human silence for weakness. Because now they understood that when humanity stayed quiet, they weren't planning surrender. They were planning victory.